Hi guys, Maikeru here. This is my video about Necromancy's top monsters to fully AFK. This is 100% AFK for 10 minutes at a time. Step away from your keyboard, come back, still alive, still trucking, and then you just top up your potions and you get back to it. So without further ado, let's get into it. One thing I want to premise talking about is what a Blood Reaver does and how it helps you to AFK at the earlier levels of Necromancy. You do not need a Blood Reaver at higher levels, but at the lower level training, you can use this anywhere I show in this video to help you get some extra healing. If you see yourself dying while trying to AFK any of these monsters, you can use a Blood Reaver to help heal you and sustain you at those lower levels until you get 100% accuracy and you're dealing enough damage to sustain yourself with Soul Split. So how does it work? So what you need to do is you need to set your auto fire rate on your Blood Reaver to 7. What this does is allows it to heal you every 7 attacks. This will heal you for 1k HP and take away 1k HP away from your Reaver. This is a consistent heal over time. You also want to make your Reaver passive, so if you press escape, go to your settings, go to skills and experience under gameplay, scroll down to summoning, and you can set your familiar combat to passive instead of whatever it's on right now. That means the familiar will never take away your XP by attacking things. This also works for any familiar, so if you just want the passive 1% crit from a Cowg, or the passive extra damage from a Ripper, you can set it to passive and still get the buff. You can add scrolls to your familiar by just clicking the scroll icon in the familiar interface as well, so you don't have to have them in your inventory. So if you head over to whatever place you want to AFK with your Blood Reaver, with all of those settings done, your Reaver will then heal you over time passively whenever your HP goes lower. This way you can keep up your HP pretty consistently and you don't have to worry about soul splitting. You can protect mage against savages, for example, or melee against beasts, and get your healing from your familiar. Alongside probably using Vampirism Aura for some extra heals as well, and then you'll never die really. The only other thing is you need to be on Ancient Spellbook and you need to bring runes for the Prism of Restoration spell. This heals your familiar. So yes, you are getting continuous healing, but he is taking his own HP to heal you. So whenever your Reaver hits maybe half HP or something, you can see his HP bar in your familiar interface, like right now, mine is at 16,000 health. You want to drop that Prism of Restoration when your familiar hits about half HP. That then will start healing it over time while it's out. One cast of this will fully heal your familiar, even if it doesn't look like it's healing. Trust me, it is. It just takes a little bit for the familiar interface to update sometimes. So yeah, it does make it a bit less AFK at these lower levels, but it allows you to do stuff like Abyssal Savages without relying on Soul Split, and this is a huge healing tool at those low levels. You'll also pay for the Reaver in drops that you get from the monsters, so you don't really have to worry about it costing quite a lot right now. You'll still sustain your costs even if you don't profit. So with that little tip being said, let's move on to actual monsters to AFK. I have 4 of them for you. So our first monster we're going to lead into is Abyssal Savages in the Wildy. They are fully AFK XP of 900k to 1.1 million experience an hour, which is pretty damn good. If you want to know what bar I use to kill these, it's on the screen right now, nice and big for you guys. And then in addition to that, when it comes to the gear, you can use power or tank armor here. I prefer power armor because obviously more kills per hour is more XP, but you can use tank armor if you feel like that's safer or if it's the only armor you have. When it comes to your necklace, Essence of Finality or a Reaper necklace is super useful for the 3% accuracy, especially at the lower levels. When you get to a higher level, it doesn't matter too much. You can just use an Amulet of Souls, as the Soul Split heal increase is super useful, which is why I like Essence of Finality, because it gives you both the accuracy and the Soul Split increase. When it comes to your ring, you do not want to be using Reavers here, especially at the earlier levels, because that accuracy minus is not worth it, as you're sacrificing 5% damage for 5% crit if you're not 100% accurate, so don't use that until later on. When it comes to the book, I like the Book of When, as it increases your AoE, although if you would rather use something like a full book, that works as well. When it comes to aura at a low level, Vampirism's great. At higher levels, I'd probably use Inspiration or something of that sort, maybe a Majra aura, something that's going to increase your DPS. When it comes to familiar, you can use a Reaver if you need that extra healing, but I don't need a Reaver, and I kind of like a little bit of passive healing still, so I choose a Bunyip, as it is quite a nice little extra heal over time. You can also use a passive Cowg, a passive Ripper Demon, whatever you like. When it comes to pros for this method, one of them is that it can be done at level 80 with Protect Magic, Vampirism, and the reaver setup I showed at the start of this video. This means these are possible to get 900k experience an hour with a tier 80 weapon, and, you know, even just Anima Core of Sliskate armor, which I was doing in the race. Super good, and definitely best in slot at those levels. At levels 80 and 90, these monsters are by far the best. When you're closing into 120, however, obviously there are monsters that are better than this. Another pro is that you don't need a Zut Cape. There is no use of skulls in this bar, so no need for the Zut Cape. It does have some cons, however. One of the cons being it is a very popular spot in the wilderness, and you're going to have to hop a fair few times, like you can see on screen. I had to hop a decent amount to find a spot here. I probably hopped for about 2 minutes before I found a spot, which wasn't too crazy bad, but it's also not peak time right now, so yeah, you could be hopping for a long time. And another con is that the player-owned Slayer dungeon does not work well for these. You can't just put 5 of these in your dungeon instead and expect to get the same XP. Because if you take a look on screen, I am killing a lot of these bad boys. You're not going to kill anywhere near that many in your player-owned Slayer dungeon. It's all about the mob density here, not necessarily how much XP I'm getting per one. It's just I'm killing like 10 at the same time from where I'm standing, so you kinda can't use them in a dungeon unless you want, you know, 500k experience an hour. And that's it for Savages. Moving on. Next up, we have Moss Golems at the Lost Grove. You want to go ahead and head up into the area. You want to put your cannon down around where I put it right here. Then you want to run to the west, a little bit up the cliff next to the tree, and become one with this little bush on the floor. This method is fully AFK, 1 to 1.2 million experience an hour, although I would recommend doing this at the higher levels, because even at 120 with a Essence of Finality, I have 95% accuracy. This means the higher your level, the better it is. So I'd say this is one of those type of methods for maybe level 110 and higher, especially if you're using the new Ice Nihil that's designed for Necromancy and getting an extra 5% accuracy. You could probably do this way before 120, but not quite like the level 80 and 90 that the Savages require. If you wanted the Moss Golems bar, it's on the screen right now, a much more tanky and defensive heavy bar, because these things hurt. You want to protect from melee the whole time, and you want to be using this bar. No soul split in these bad boys. In addition to that, you also want tier 90 tank gear, and you want to be using a vampirism aura, and you want to use darkness constantly. It does have a 12-minute duration now, which makes it much easier to use, but if it does fall, you're in for a bad time, so you need to keep an eye on that. If you have all of these things going, these are fully AFK. You heal a little bit from your vampirism aura, you have devotion and having it getting extended when things die to then lead you into your next blood siphon, which then heals you all the way back up. Obviously, there are pros to this method. One of the big pros is that it's not as popular as the other spots, at least at the moment. I haven't seen anyone cover this method, and it's something that I've experienced myself. I made my own bar, etc. So it's not like I've copied somewhere else. So maybe it's just because it's not a popular method right now, or it hasn't been showcased. So more people might be here in the future. But again, it is a fairly high level spot, so not everyone can do this. It doesn't need a Zut Cape, which is another pro because we're not using skulls here. You don't have enough Adren to have skulls in your rotation, at least in my experience. And for the cons, it does require tier 90 perked out tank gear and darkness. So it is the most defensive heavy method, but if you like that type of thing, I personally like Animate Dead and darkness and stuff, so this is right up my alley. So for me, that's technically not even a con. One of the things that's definitely a con though is if you let your darkness fall, then you're the one that's going to be falling very shortly after. So you do need to make sure that you're paying attention to that or setting up an Alt-1 AFK Warden notification to let you know when it's falling off, just to make sure that you keep that up at all times. Other than that, it's actually a super fun, super chill method, and it's my favourite out of these four personally. Next up, we have Abyssal Beasts in a Abyssal Slayer dungeon. They are fully AFK, 900k to 1.1 million experience an hour. The bar is on screen right here. These are pretty relaxing in a Abyssal Slayer dungeon. They're pretty chill, you just soul split them, especially if you're high level. If you're low level, again you can use Protect from Melee and a Reaver here, because these do have quite high defense. So I think you get 100% accuracy on these bad boys with a Essence of Finality or Reaper Necklace at level 107. So you're not going to be dealing full damage to these until then. So again, not one you're going to do at really low levels, but decent for those mid levels pushing to 120 type thing. So when it comes to the pros of these bad boys in your Personal Slayer dungeon, is that there is no competition. They're instanced in your own dungeon. So these are the best choice for your Personal Slayer dungeon at 99+. There's nothing in our testing so far that actually comes close to this for a Personal Slayer dungeon. These do seem to be the kings of the POSD, if that's how the cool kids say it. When it comes to the cons, there are a fair few. It does require a Zuck Cape again for the Skulls buff. You're not really going to deal much damage to these without that. That is one of the biggest sources of your experience an hour. The souls for these can take a tremendously long time. You could be sitting farming these souls for ages, just to then put them in your dungeon. And again, like I said before, it needs around 107 Necro to get 100% accuracy. You can get this a little bit earlier with a Nihil, and you can also, again, use a Reaver otherwise to heal you and protect from melee instead of Soul Split reliance. But overall, these are a pretty solid alternative to Abyssal Savages. Savages are technically just as good, but they have a lot of competition. So if you're looking to do something yourself without the competition, these are pretty much the Savages of the dungeon. And finally, we have the famous Platypus Armoured Phantoms method. This is a fully AFK experience an hour of 1.3 to 1.5 million. It's a very, very good and efficient method. There is rumors that the Platypus is going to be nerfed, but there is no confirmation on this at this present time. So what makes this method so good is this Platypus, he stands to the south of you, and he blocks the Armoured Phantoms from being able to reach that spot. That means if you're standing in the center of the room where I am right now, I'm standing between a rock and a wall and the Platypus, which means I can only get attacked from the front. That means only one mob hits me. Out of all of the 5 mobs that are going to be trying to hit me, only one of them successfully can. To get a Platypus, you just need As a First Resort completed, and you hunt it south of Uglog after lighting a lavender bush. There's more info on the wiki on how to actually get the Platypus. I'm not going to go into that in this video, but he is your best friend here because he blocks one of the Armoured Phantoms. Tanking 2 of these bad boys is probably death, so it stops you from dying. This makes this method very, very chill, very AFK. If you want the bar, it's on screen right here, and it's actually very chill once you get it set up. You don't need tank armor because only one's hitting you. You can use power armor. Salve Amulet E is amazing here. It gives you 20% accuracy and damage, which is absolutely overpowered for Necromancy. And then you use a cannon to the north to lure them. So that leads me into the setup, which is the riskiest part of this method. You enter the instance, and once you're in here and you found a free world, which can take a very long time, you put the cannon to the north right here, and as you put the cannon down, I would protect from melee and devotion. That means any hits you take for the next 10 seconds won't hurt you, so you can get into position without taking too much damage. Once the Armoured Phantoms have kind of been lured towards you, you want to bladed dive to the spot and spam call your Platypus, and he should just pop out south of you and stand in that spot. This also applies whenever you're repairing your cannon. Use a sticky bomb. Once you've used the sticky bomb, it'll root all of the phantoms so you can run over to your cannon, repair it, and then you bladed dive back into the spot and spam call your Platypus. If you bladed dive into the spot, there should be 0 issues with any of the positioning. But this is still very risky, and it does take a little bit of getting used to, and you may die while learning this positioning, so it's risky in that regards. If you mess up your positioning or stand on top of your Platypus and stop it being a blocker, then it can mess up your whole lore. It can make things go bad real quick. So that leads me into the pros and cons. These are the best experience an hour while AFKing, so that is the biggest pro for these. These can push 1.5 million experience an hour when the next best thing is like 1.2. So it's literally about 20-25% better than the second best. These can even be done in tier 70 power armor. You don't even need like amazing power armor or tank armor or anything like that. It's mainly just your weapons. As long as you have tier 90 plus weapons and a decent level, you should be doing good with a Salve Amulet. Although, as part of the cons, you do need a Zuck Cape for the Skulls buff, as you're only using 4 abilities here, and your biggest, hardest hitting, and most important ability is the Skulls. So if you're not using Death Skulls, if you don't have the Zuck Cape, then you pretty much can't do this method. Also, this is insanely crowded. You know I said I helped a lot of worlds with the Abyssal Savages? Well, this one, it literally took me about 8 minutes to find a world, and I went through probably about 70 worlds. It is crazy packed. For good reason, it is the best XP, but you can take a long time to find these, so that's a huge negative. And again, like I said before, the setting up and the repairing of the cannon can be very, very dangerous if you don't instantly get back in the spot with a bladed dive, and spam call your Platypus so he gets ready to plot. Once you get used to it, it's not so bad, but especially for the first few hours, it's really, really rocky. And that is it for this video. If you made it this far into the video, you're an absolute legend as always. Thank you so much. Please give the video a like if it was useful to you. Subscribe if you're new for loads of future content all later RuneScape free. And until next time, see ya.